Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Hello everyone, I'm here to make a nice little tier list of guns and their femininity. So I'd like to set a few ground rules down first as to what defines a feminine gun and what defines a masculine gun. So, generally speaking, a feminine gun will be defined by the presence of at least one of three categories: using a polymer construction, being a bullpup design, or having some nerdy aspect to it, be it historical nerdiness or some gimmicky feature. Now, masculinity in a gun can be found with wooden furniture, high recoil, and large body. So, getting started, we can take a look at the P90. It's a polymer framed SMG with a bullpup design that shoots a pretty small round, so that's clearly a feminine gun. Now the 1911 is got wooden furniture. It shoots a fairly large pistol round at the 45, but it's not quite as super masculine, so I'll put it in butch. Now, most people would think the M1 Garand would be masculine or butch, but actually, since it's such iconic World War II memorabilia, it's actually gonna be pretty feminine because I think you've all seen that one clip. Then the Beretta 92, I'd say it's pretty androgynous because while it is black, it does incorporate some polymers into it. It's not totally polymer, and it doesn't really have the sleek aesthetics that is more associated with feminine firearms. Now, PPK is, while it also is mostly steel framed, its small size makes it a bit more effeminate than masculine. Now the FNFAL is pretty androgynous because while it does use polymer frames, shoots a large round, the 308, and does not incorporate any wacky bullpup designs. Now the AK-74, I'm actually going to put that as butch because it's not fully masculine, but it does not come off as that feminine. Now the AK-74U, which is smaller, will actually make it up to androgynous as its smaller stature makes it slightly more effeminate, but still maintains masculinity. Now the AUG has another polymer framed bullpup, is going to get put into total feminine. Most bullpups will end up there. And then I was having difficulty deciding where the M82 would end up. I'm kind of leaning towards androgynous because while it's a very big round, its weight technically does cut down on recoil, and therefore pretty much anyone can shoot it. And its black, while it doesn't incorporate polymers, its black finish is rather sleek and could really go either way. Now, the Scorpion Evo 3, that's going to be somewhat effeminate, not totally feminine because it's not exactly anything wacky, no bullpups, no nerd shit. It's just a polymer frame, 9mm. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the USP because it's pretty generic. The Glock, just because it's so basic, it's going to end up in feminine because it's just the iconic polymer frame. And then the only bullpup I'm not going to put in total feminine is going to be the FAMAS and effeminate, just because it does have some rough corners and a lot more steel in the construction. And then the FN57, it shoots a light recoiling 5.7 round. It's mostly polymer, not just the frame. And its basically a gimmick gun, so it's totally feminine. Now the Mauser, the Car 98, I believe the photo is actually Car 98K, and we're going to put it in butch. While it does have the nerd aspect of World War II, it does have a lot more masculine aspects than other World War II guns. Now another one I'm going to put in feminine is the P50, the Keltec, and that's just because it's a total gimmick gun that uses polymer in the construction and shoots the 5.7 round. Now I was told to put the Mac 10 on this list, but honestly I'm just going to put it in androgynous because it doesn't really stand out as either masculine or feminine. It kind of just is. Now the C96 broom handle, as both a gimmick of its time, the first semi-automatic pistol, as well as its mild recoil, and while it does have wood on the frame and all metal, it's got that nerd shit going on, so it's absolutely feminine. Now the Lee Enfield, I'm actually going to put on effeminate for just being, actually no, that's the most Nagant, then that makes it too androgynous, because it's World War II memorabilia, but because so many people have it, and it is one of the heavier recoiling of the World War II guns, it's just going to end up there. And then the MP5 is somewhat effeminate. While not all of them use it, a lot of them have polymer constructions, especially in the furniture. And then its light recoil from the rolling blowback is not exactly the kind of thing that you really like to see from a masculine figure, although it has been done, as you'll see in many 80s movies. And then I forget how it's pronounced, but the Scorpion that came before the Evo 3 is, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty androgynous too. I can't really make too much of it. There's ones that have polymer, there's ones that have wood furniture, and it does have a very lightly recoiling round, but it does shoot that round pretty quick. Now the actual Lee Enfield this time I'm going to put in effeminate for that nerd shit, because everyone I've heard talk about it just obsesses over the mechanical design of it. And then the SKS I'm going to put in androgynous because it's got a bit of nerd aspects, but it is a lot more masculine than some other World War II. Well, actually that's not World War II, that's immediately afterwards, but that pre-Cold War, post-World War II era. But yeah, the SKS is going to be marked as androgynous, and then the AR-15, it's pretty androgynous. You can really make literally anything out of it. There's aspects that make it more masculine and feminine, so I'm just going to end up in the middle through sheer extremity of femininity and masculinity in both. The Vector, a personal favorite, I'm going to put in effeminate because it's polymer framed. It does have that nerd shit, but it is a pretty heavy for a 9mm. And while it doesn't incorporate a lot of nerd shit, it doesn't exactly come off as super feminine when someone uses it. Now, I don't know anyone who would deny that the Desert Eagle fits the definition of a masculine gun. It's ridiculously powerful. It uses steel, barely any polymers, even though it is a modern weapon. And it just is. And I'm also going to put the AK in here, the original AK-74 style. And that's just because it's got the heaviest of all AK recoils, and it's not really polymer unless you get a more modernized furniture set on it. And it's pretty iconic as not being something you normally see in a feminine figure's arms. And then next up is the Colt Single Action Army. I'm going to put that in masculine just because of the fact that it doesn't have any polymers whatsoever, really. And it does require a pretty masculine figure to use it properly. Now the The M14 here, the M1A I believe is actually a photo of, is going to go in androgynous because while it is technically an M1 Garand, it's far less iconic for the World War II memorabilia that put it up in feminine, so it's going to be reduced to androgynous. I've considered putting it lower, but I think androgynous is fine. The Makarov, I'm going to put that in butch. It doesn't exactly have a crazy recoil, but it does have that wood handle and all the steel construction. And it just seems like a gun for someone who fits into the butch archetype. Next up is the L96. I'm going to put that in effeminate just because it's polymer framed sniper rifle. If you don't know what the L96 is, you also know it by the name Op in most video games. And next up is the Scar. I'm going to put that in. I feel like it could really either go effeminate or butch. I'm going to try putting it in butch just because of the sheer recoil. Since the gun is so light, the recoil hits very hard. Although it is polymer, it doesn't really do anything exactly new. So it doesn't exactly nerd shit in any regard other than being well made. And it brings us on to the M60, the Gun of Rambo. I'm going to put it in masculine. I don't think anyone has any complaints against the Gun of Rambo being referred to as masculine. And the PPSH, I'm going to put that in effeminate, just under regards of its World War II memorabilia status. And then while the Thompson is also World War II, its iconography as a criminal's gun is going to put it a bit more in butch to get along with those who defy the law. Next up is, it's not a good picture because it's just a very long picture from Wikipedia. Most of these photos on here are from Wikipedia. And then this one's the Remington 870. I'm going to put it in masculine because, well, it just is. And then the AS Val, that's, I'm tempted to put in feminine, but I think it's just regular feminine, it's fine. It is a bit more nerdy of a weapon to use. But that brings us on to the Uzi. I'm going to say it's butch just because of its all metal construction, aside from some furnitures being polymer, but generally speaking it's all metal, or primarily at least. And its use in the war on drugs, congratulations, the drugs for winning. The use in the war on drugs generally by the drugs team, it just leads it to be a pretty masculine gun. Next up is the Brunelli M4. I'm going to put it in androgynous because while it does have the polymer frame and is a little bit nerdy, and if you go into the internals, it does have the masculinity of being a shotgun. Speaking of shotguns, I'm also going to put in the Spaz 12 at masculine. I don't think anyone has any problems with that. I think that's pretty reasonable. And then the last one here is the PP Bison. Now, the PP Bison probably should go in feminine, so I'm thinking it should just go here because it does have that wacky, nerdy, cylindrical magazine, and as a 9mm, it doesn't exactly have the wackiest blowback. And then, yeah, that's our little list for today. I might add changes later, and then you'll also be able to use this yourself if you go to Tier Maker. But yeah, thanks for sticking with me. That's been the Gun Femininity tier list. These are the final results.